Welcome back to my channel for a short Leica Q3 43 episode. And in a recent video about this hand grip and one more accessory from Crown, and here is actually math photographer engraved into the front side of the hand grip. I mentioned that I take the camera with this hand grip with me to Geneva. Let's quickly hear into what I said back then in that video about Crown accessories, and then I continue with the video here. And I will use the new accessories I'm going to unbox and mount with you in a moment for my trip to Geneva tomorrow, because from tomorrow on until Friday, I will meet people at Watches and Wonders, the biggest watch event in the world, the most famous watch event in the world. And by the way, on Wednesday evening, there is a huge event at the Leica store in Geneva. And that's what I did. And I want to use the opportunity to show you footage, mainly footage in this video, which I've shot with the Leica Q3 43. And the reason why I want to show it to you is very simple. Sometime back, I posted a video where I said, this is, in my opinion, the best camera in 2024. And now I will kind of update this statement and say, this is still, in my opinion, for me, with all the applications I need, my best travel camera of all times. And I want to show you the footage. I want to discuss sample images mainly, but also make a few pre-remarks. Let's kick this off. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, support my work. I'm super grateful for that. Many thanks. All right, so the Leica Q3 is a camera which has been with me for a longer time. And in particular, the Leica Q3 28mm was, of course, my first Leica Q3. Then I got the Leica Q3 43. Then I got the Leica Q3 monochrome, and that is again a 28mm focal length. So what makes me so obsessed with this camera here? And that's what this video is basically about. I want to share with you why I really, truly love this camera and why I believe this is my, so far, best ever travel companion for photography. And I made it a habit many years back that most of the time when I'm leaving the house, when I'm on the move, when I'm going on a plane, when I'm traveling, I always have a camera with me, because there might be an image, a shot I would miss otherwise if I don't have a pro camera with me. And that's actually my first point. This is a professional camera. And of course, if you look what category this is counting in, it's under the headline of compact cameras, but it doesn't look really compact. More compact than many system cameras, but not really compact. In the way, for instance, you would assign this attribute of being compact to a Fuji X100 Mark VI. This is a much bigger camera. And why is it professional? Well, first of all, it has a highly professional sensor, a triple resolution backside illuminated CMOS sensor, very likely a Sony sensor derivative, which Leica modified for their own needs. And with 60 megapixel, you get very far in terms of resolution. Second, and let me quickly switch the camera on to make this a bit more lively. Second, you have a highly professional autofocus system in this camera here. And if you go into the focus section here, and let's go here in this one, you see we have here intelligent autofocus, we have autofocus single and autofocus continuous. I can also trigger manual focus via that switch here. Let me quickly show you. If I push here and rotate the focus ring, then I'm in manual focus mode. And if I want to get back into autofocus mode, I just let it snap in here. Very simple. So with autofocus continuous, you have full tracking features here under autofocus mode. And by the way, since firmware 4.0.0, where I posted a fully fledged tutorial about this new firmware, you have improved AI-based, AI-trained tracking, subject detection, and what have you. And on subject detection, we talk in the Leica SL3 and Leica Q3 world typically about humans and also about animals. And we can always distinguish whether we want to catch everything, the eye, face, and body, or the eye and face only. And that camera here is pretty quick, very reliable in autofocus, and makes it an ideal camera for people photography. And of course, the second feature which makes this camera, in my opinion, ideal for people photography is its focal length. In contrast to 28mm, you have here 43mm, and that is what many people call a normal focal length, and is sitting somewhere, I would say, and formulated a bit more sloppy, between wide angle and tele. And for people, that's just ideal. And of course, when I make my tour through sample images with you in a moment, I will show you some people images. And the widest open aperture on this lens, which, by the way, is in the category of the best that Leica has to offer, is an Apo-Summicron lens. The widest open aperture is an f2.0. And already at f2.0, I'm going to show you in the sample images, this lens is incredibly sharp and delivers an incredible amount of detail. And that makes, in my opinion, this camera ideal for people photography, but I come to a bunch of more applications in a moment. Also for any other field of photography I personally can think of. And then on the lens, of course, we have here the macro mode, and I can switch it here. If I do it, the distance scale changes here from normal distance to close-up distance. I personally believe they should have written here an engraved close-up and not macro, because for me, in my personal definition, a macro lens should have a 1:1 magnification, or at least a 1:2 magnification, so 50%. But, you know, Leica calls it macro, and I personally believe it's a really valuable, highly capable close-up shooting mode, which I'm also going to show you, because Watches and Wonders, where I was shooting the camera, we actually talk about watches and jewelry, and that is ideal in terms of subjects for close-up shootings. As a technical side remark, there is a wonderful coincidence coming with the sensor, the triple resolution 60 megapixel in maximum resolution sensor sitting in the camera here, and the lens, because the diagonal of a full frame sensor with 36 times 24 millimeter is exactly 43 millimeter. And the Leica engineers say and think that this makes this camera lens combination unbeatable in terms of being distortion free and having a very clean image representation. And I personally believe that. I think it is, from a technical perspective, a fantastic coincidence that the focal length is exactly the diagonal of the sensor sitting in the camera body. So, where are we? What did I say so far? Well, I told you it's ideal for people photography because the focal length is sitting between wide angle lenses and tele lenses. It's a so-called normal focal length, which roughly corresponds to the vision of the human eye. And it has close-up capabilities here if I turn into macro mode. So it's also good for product photography. So we talked about people photography and product photography so far. Now, what I'm not going to show you in this video is it's also really good for landscape photography. And here are a couple of images I shot in New York, actually from Brooklyn Bridge Park, and they are all shot with the Leica Q3 43. And whoever thinks that 43 millimeter is not made for landscape is wrong and mistaken. So I think these images speak for themselves. Really good image quality, good shots, and all taken with the Leica Q3 43. And you will see at Watches and Wonders, when I show you the images, I did a few shots inside the building. It's the Palexpo building where the trade fairs typically happen in Geneva. And you will see this is architectural or landscape or kind of sitting a little bit above wide angle focal length photography, because 43 millimeter is not far into tele lens territory. It is sitting between wide angle and tele lenses and is, I repeat myself for the third time, a normal focal length. So we have now people photography, we have product photography, we have landscape photography, and it has a wonderful property which is coming with this backside illuminated sensor. It has absolutely fantastic low light qualities. And that is something I can quickly show you here, at least on the ISO settings. Go here into the setting and push the slider. You see it has an extended ISO range going down to 50. The native ISO of the camera sensor is an ISO of 100. It's the so-called native or base ISO. And I can go up here to an ISO value of 100,000 if I want. And that is pretty capable. But most importantly, A lot of cameras can go up to 50,000 or 100,000 ISO, but the sensor sitting in this camera here, which, as I said before, is very likely from Sony and then modified and tweaked by Leica, is a low noise sensor. So you will see images I shot with, for instance, 12,500 ISO, and they are pretty noise free. Of course, I can also always these days apply AI-based noise reduction in post-processing, for instance, in Lightroom or with Topaz Denoise AI and other software. And ISO, shooting with high ISO values these days, at least in my own humble opinion, is no longer a topic we need to discuss. It's just working. Even if you go up to 25,000 ISO, your images will not be ruined and will look good after you put in some effort in post-processing. And then last but not least, this camera is also a beast in terms of videography. And let me quickly show you. You swipe to get into the video mode. And if we go in the video mode here and in the menu, and we go to video profiles, you will see here highly professional settings. And if we go here, for instance, here and go to MOV, which is my choice, you have cinematic 8K, you have 8K resolution, you have cinematic 4K, 4K resolution with high frames per second, and so on and so on. So you can also use this camera for professional videography. And since the tracking system, subject detection, and everything I mentioned in the context of autofocus before is working so well in still images, it also gives you benefits in videography. So this is, in my opinion, the perfect all-rounder if you are on travel. And now, guys, don't get me wrong, right? I said so many times on the channel how much I love my Q3 43. And guess what? I do not get paid by Leica for that. I purchased this camera with my own money. I spent my own money. And Leica is not paying me. They are not giving me any benefits for saying what I'm saying in this video. I say it because I'm convinced. I'm totally convinced, and drop me a comment what you think, what your experience is, or your thoughts about this Q3 43. I'm convinced by trying out many cameras. You see on my channel so much gear I'm shooting, having here in the studio. Just look in the glass vitrines here in front of you, and that's only two. There are two more here just on the side, and this is all full of gear. But this is my camera to go to when I'm on travel. And that's why I took it with me to Geneva. And of course, decorated with math photographer here on a new hand grip from Owl Crown, which my friend Gaston donated to me. So this is conviction, what I'm telling you here. And if you look for a great travel companion, a professional camera in a relatively compact form, size and shape with an acceptable weight, and with all the features you might want to use in still image photography and videography, then this is my recommendation. And now let me go into sample images, because I really want to underpin with footage what I'm saying here and telling you. Let's go right into these images and let's see what we find. All right, let me underpin what I just said in the last 10 minutes by sample footage. And first of all, we spoke about landscape. Now the Palexpo, this building where the trade fair, the Watches and Wonders typically is. I was shooting, of course, and you see, is actually not too narrow, the angle. You can see here, this is a booth where you can get all kinds of magazines. And by the way, watch the level of sharpness, clearness, crispness, and how you can see what type of watches and magazines are there in the booth. They are free to take them home. Look at them, people are sorting it in here, and here is someone studying a schedule, I guess, at Watches and Wonders. And this is shot at an ISO of 200 only because there was enough light here. Here we have now an ISO of 4000, and if we look into that, it's a pretty okay-ish angle, right? It's not as narrow as what you would expect if you think about a telelens, and 43mm, I say it now for the fourth time, is a normal focal length. And you get an incredible level of detail here. People walking, of course, you get motion blurriness here. If people walk too quickly, this is shot at 1/80 seconds, f8.0, so stop down. And as I said, an ISO of 4000, but it's pretty reasonable. And you saw the landscape pictures. I should probably better call them cityscapes from New York before. And this is the angle, the field of view you get with 43mm. Here another shot, people gathering here in a lounge and having some food, conversations, discussing business. I think this is the part of Palexpo where you see the smaller independent brands here. And that is, of course, an area where people engage, and a lot of people engage if you look at that. Same here, Audemars Piguet was for the very first time after many years on Watches and Wonders again, and look at the level of detail you get here. This is an ISO of 3200, and as I mentioned before, ISO is no longer an issue for these Leica sensors, or should I say Sony sensors. And this looks pretty good. And you get a lot of detail here, guy on the phone, calling someone, people having their trolleys and their bags, you know, what have you. Pretty cool. Then we talked about product photography, and here's an example. This is shot widest open f2.0. Since there was a lot of light, Auto ISO decided for an ISO of 320 and an incredible level of sharpness already widest open. Look at that. And you also see nice background blurriness here in this shot. I really like that. And of course, I was at a closer distance, but not yet using the macro switch into the changing scale to close-up distance. And I get you another example where I was then finally using the macro switch. And that's a watch from Vacheron Constantin. And if you look here, this is shot at an f8.0 now. Very, very sharp. And you, by the way, see on all the exhibition pieces here a lot of dust, which is interesting. I would have expected they clean this a bit better because it's in a glass vitrine. There should not be too much dust around, but it is what it is. And look at this level of detail here on the dial of the watch. Very nice, I think. Here is another example. And you see here star constellations on that watch, and all the details are there. This is very crisp, very sharp, very nice. Here another watch. Let's get and zoom out for a moment and look at that. Nice product photography, isn't it? And this is done by switching into the macro mode, which I would call close-up shooting mode and not macro mode. But again, star constellations and lots of details. Look how sharp this Apo-Summicron is if you stop it down. But as we saw before already, if you shoot it widest open. Look at this one here, Vacheron Constantin again. Very nice, lots of details here. I think this is a perpetual, very likely perpetual calendar with the Chinese years and Chinese symbols here. Quite nice. Here I was going a little bit into distance again. This is a sculpture of a watchmaker, but again, look at the incredible amount of detail you get here. Very, very nice. Look at that. And here I was intentionally stopping down to f8.0 because I wanted to have this digital pattern in the background also sharp and crisp. And it worked, of course. Here's some very valuable, highly priced pieces, timepieces from Patek Philippe. This is an Aquanaut watch and is fully iced out with diamonds and blue sapphires. And look at this. This is now shot in the macro mode. And in the macro mode, you see it here in the metadata of the image. The camera automatically stops down from f2.0 to f2.8. And that is the widest open aperture. You can shoot in the close-up mode, in the macro mode. And look at that timepiece here. Wonderful. Completely non-affordable. Here an even more expensive, more valuable timepiece. This is a minute repeater. You see it on the switch here on the left-hand side. And this is also iced out in rainbow style and is very expensive, very rare watch. I don't think that a lot of people on planet Earth have access to these type of watches. And they are also already at their retail price, super expensive. And then there was this one here. Here I stopped down a little bit to f5.6, ISO was 400. And this is an incredible novelty from Patek Philippe. I cropped in here already. And is also a minute repeater. You see the slide, the switch here on the left-hand side. It also has a perpetual calendar, and I think the stones are aquamarine. And if I'm not mistaken, this watch is limited to 8 pieces worldwide and has a retail price of 4.5 million. That is so much money that it is hard to believe that people spend so much money on a wristwatch. Staying for a moment with Patek Philippe, here are 2 novelties. The left-hand side watch is a minute repeater. Look again how dirty this watch is. And they arranged them on an old radio here. And although I was stopping down even to f11, the radio is still a little bit blurry in the background here and not sharp and in focus, but the watches are very sharp and in focus. And as I said, we talk here about examples for product photography. And this is again a minute repeater. You see the slide switch here on the left-hand side, and is a modern style and design minute repeater with a blue dial, a blue bracelet, and orange accents and stitchings on the bracelet. Very nice. And this one here is also a novelty, is the Cubitus skeleton watch. And they brought a similar watch, I think, about 1.5 years ago as a novelty, but it was not skeletonized, so you could not see in part through to the movement. And these are two novelties, all super expensive, not affordable, but nicely arranged here on a radio, but also super dirty. Look at that. I don't think that anyone cleaned these watches, and this one even has here a scratch on an exhibition piece, although it's behind glass in a vitrine. Very interesting. Here the exhibition booth of H. Moser & C., an independent brand in Switzerland, still underrated in my opinion, but a rising star. That's at least what I feel when I look at their watches. And here we still had enough light. So this is an ISO of 1000, and you get here a lot of detail here. If you look into that, you also see the three-dimensional engravings here, the writing on the booth. And if you look inside and switch to the next one, inside, the light looks very bright, but it was actually very dim. And this is now a shot with an ISO of 12,500. I quickly showed it before in the video, and this is good image quality. If we try to hunt for details, look at that sign here. Looks very, very good, and noise for these type of sensors is not really an issue. Look at the nice decoration here. This is all very clean, very crisp. Of course, motion fuzziness here. People are moving, but here that guy is standing. And I think here this is a crisp representation of his back and the backside of his head. And lots of details here to discover. Look at the flowers. There is no eating of details away because of noise reduction in post-processing with these sensors. You don't lose a lot of detail, and these images are highly usable, although they are shot with a high ISO of 12,500. I will not go through all these images, but here another couple of shots I want to quickly show. So the Panerai booth here. And they had here like an aquarium where people could walk in and then look at the watches. I think this is the authentic chamber they use to test their watches for pressure underwater. And these watches are very often used by the Italian military. And I think it's a nice idea to bring this aquarium type booth in here. And you see this is now inside the chamber. And here they are showing off how their watches resist the pressure from water, which is very interesting, of course, and people can walk inside. And here, for instance, again, an ISO of 5000, no problem at all. If I crop in here by 100%, this is very sharp, very crisp. Details are not eaten away. It just looks good. Watches and wonders, and probably that's the wonders part, is not only about watches, it's also about jewelry. And here is another example for product photography, and look at the level of detail we get here on this piece of jewelry. Looks very, very good, very nice. And I think we covered so far landscape by the Palexpo, the exhibition halls where I showed you photos. We covered product photography. We covered low light photography. And now it's time to look a little bit into people photography. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, when I showed you that clip from my video about my owl crown accessory video for Leica Q3 cameras, I was invited to the Leica event at the Leica boutique in Geneva. And the guest of honor was John Goldberger. As far as I know, he's both. He is a photographer and does exhibitions, but he is also a very serious and recognized watch collector. And Leica, of course, connected Watches and Wonders to show off their own watches, but also to talk about photography. And there were a lot of guests, and let me just go here quickly in the sample images to the beginning of the event. And the first image I took here is Chris with no H, friend of mine, Swiss photographer, YouTuber, videographer, and he had the official mandate to shoot the event, which he did. And look at that. This is shot now at an f2.0, and this is what I mean when I say a 43mm focal length with widest open f2.0 is just perfect for people photography. And look at the face of Chris with no H. It looks really crisp and really good. Was shot at an ISO of 500 and, as I said, widest open. Then this image I showed already, this is Gülten Rath. She's the managing director. She's responsible, in charge, accountable for all Leica operations, everything that's going on in the Leica context, including subsidiaries of Leica in Switzerland. She's a really good friend of mine. And again, I did shoot this image at f2.0. Look at the very nice background blurriness we get here and the separation of Gülten in the foreground from the background. And then look at the level of detail you get in her face. I think this looks really, really good. Shot at 1/80 seconds, f2.0 and an ISO of 250. Here, Ivan Venzin. He's the marketing head of Leica Switzerland, also a good friend. And look at that. Shot widest open at f2.0, and that is one of the characteristics of Apo-Summicron lenses in the Leica lineup. They are sharp, very crisp, even when shot widest open here at f2.0. And this is just great, right? If we look into that. Let's see what else do we have here. Here, a picture I was asked to take from Dr. Kaufmann here on the right-hand side, then Gülten, the Leica head of Switzerland, and another client. And they asked me to take this shot. Also shot widest open at f2.0. Nice shot. They also had food at the event. And I forgot to mention, but if you're a food blogger, the Leica Q3 43 is your camera, because you can nicely shoot food here. And I was switching again into macro mode here, f2.8, so the camera automatically stopped down from f2.0, which I dialed in on the lens, to an f2.8, but it looks really good. Look at the background lights, look at the background blurriness, look at this very yummy sushi here, and the level of detail and sharpness where the focus was sitting. Very nice, and I like it a lot. Here again, Ivan Venzin. I think I showed that image very quickly before. f2.0, nice background blurriness, separation of Ivan from the background, and very sharp. Look at his skin, look at the color, the tonality, look how this is coming across, very natural. That's Ivan in the way I know him, and the camera takes fantastic photos. Then Chris with no H, making fun behind the video camera and pointing his Sony towards me and rolling his eyeballs here. And we had a lot of fun on that event. And also here, look at the level of detail. There we go, right? This is f2.0. The Q3 43 always delivers. Very nice. Here we have John Goldberger getting probably a bit of rest before he was on the podium in a discussion with Dr. Kaufmann, the owner of Leica, and with other representatives who asked him questions. And he was just resting here on a couch and probably looking into his smartphone. And look at this. This is so natural. The skin tone, the colors, the details on his skin, and the way it's capturing a moment where the very famous John Goldberger is resting on a couch just in a corner in the Leica store in Geneva before he's sitting on the panel with all these other people and answering to their questions. A very nice image. And I think that is what this Leica Q3 43 is all about. Maybe it's the camera that is best for the typical description of photography, that you capture a moment that just happens and never comes back. And the Leica Q3 43 lives, breathes, expresses that for me. And that's why I like that camera so much. And you saw in all these images, I will not print any frames here. They are not really images to write home about. They are not meant for an exhibition. They are not meant for a competition. They are not meant to be printed. They are my memories, moments I captured because I enjoyed these days on Watches and Wonders. I wanted to capture these watches and sometimes the jewelry just for my own memories. And I wanted to capture the memories from the Leica event and later from the evening. And that is what this camera is for. It's just for me. It's my companion. It's my camera to capture a moment that happens and highly likely never comes back. Here, Dr. Kaufmann again mentioned it, the owner of Leica. He is the majority owner, and he bought Leica with his family many years back when Leica was at the cliff and almost got bankrupt and insolvent. And he's the one who really carries the vision of Leica as we know it today. He's the one who drives the strategy. He's the one who is innovative, creative, and comes up with new ideas. And here he is again with Gülten. This was shot at f2.0, and you see the two people he's talking to, they are blurry, but Dr. Kaufmann, where the focus was sitting, is pinpoint sharp. That's what I mean about a moment that happens and not comes back. That's what I mean about people photography with a Leica Q3 43, a normal focal length of 43 mm, shot widest open with an Apo-Summicron at f2.0. Just very nice. And again, here may be an example for the bokeh you can create. This is the book they basically published for the 100-year anniversary of Leica last year. And you see here nicely the reflections on the table where this is resting and the beautiful background lights here. Circular background lights, wonderfully soft blurriness, and it's just enjoyable. What you get here, again, the camera stopped down to f2.8 from on the lens dialed in f2.0 because I had to switch into close-up distance with the macro switch on the lens. And I think that's it. I don't think there is much more I want to tell you and show you. I think I made my points. I told you what I personally believe this camera is for, why I love it so much, and I will now quickly wrap up the video and conclude my presentation here. Before concluding the video, let me make a few more comments here. First of all, this camera has not in-body image stabilization like the Leica SL3, which is a platform relative to this camera, but a system camera, of course. But it has optical image stabilization. And if you go into the menu, you find this here. And you see here, you can choose optical image stabilization, auto, on or off. And if it is in auto mode, the camera figures out by itself whether you need support by optical image stabilization. Now, optical image stabilization is not as powerful as in-body image stabilization, where the sensor of the camera is floating freely in a magnetic field and in this way compensating for tiny little shakes and migrations. But optical image stabilization gives you at least 3 to 4 full stops where you can shoot longer handheld exposures. And that is, of course, a benefit this camera has here. And then last but not least, if you have also a system camera from Leica, highly likely a Leica SL3, and you want to basically swap cameras in a very quick way, you will find, and I made a video about that and posted it, that the graphical user interface and the user experience is fully aligned between the compact Q3 cameras and the SL3 camera family. So the Leica SL3 and the Leica SL3S. I have a Leica SL3 Reporter Edition. And if you know how to shoot a Leica Q3, you know how to shoot a Leica SL3 and vice versa. And that creates an ecosystem. And I'm going to talk about that very soon on coming Saturday at the Leica Summit in Bern. And we'll look into the Leica Q3 43, we'll look into the Leica SL3 and the Leica M EV1 and the Leica M11P. And they all together form an ecosystem, which we could call Leica photography, but the closest relatives within this ecosystem are the Q3 and the SL3. And Leica made these platforms from everything you experience as a user and photographer, from the way the menu is organized, from the way the icons are done. This is convergent and basically the same platform from a software and firmware perspective. And that makes it very easy for people to own a compact camera plus a system camera, in this case the Leica SL3, and shoot them whenever the shooting situation dictates what camera is better for the purpose that's coming up with that shooting situation. And for me on travel, this is the camera to go to. And now drop me a comment what you think. Do you own this camera? Have you ever shot it? Have you ever had it in your hands? What do you think about the footage? Not talking about image composition. These are really not special images, but what you can do with it indoors. High ISO shooting, product photography, people photography, the Palexpo building where the trade fair was taking place, and so on. The universality of this Leica Q3 43, which for me created almost an obsession that I don't like to go on travel if my Leica Q3 43 is not in my backpack. If you liked that video, don't forget to drop me your thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel. There's always more to come. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and healthy. And of course, peace out.